Hello everyone, today I'm very excited to talk about a new writer. I'm talking about The Dust Never Settles by Karina Lickorish Quinn. Now, The Dust Never Settles is a new title and it comes from Karina. Karina is a British Peruvian writer and I'm very excited to hear about this book because Karina, being bilingual and being British Peruvian, had a really interesting outlook in that she wanted to take the principles, the outline of quintessential British/Western storytelling and blend it with Peruvian mythology, Peruvian culture, and the Peruvian cultural style of their storytelling, which is heavily laden with surrealism, magical realism, and the legacy of ancestors. And so when I heard about this, I was hugely excited. Now, in summary, this book doesn't quite fulfill the very high expectations that I had for it. But the reason why I'm sharing this is because I want to share this new writer with you. And I really hope Karina gets more of an opportunity and more editorial support in her next books, because I think there's a real chance that we could have a very exciting new voice. Now, the setup feels quite Isabel Allende-ish for those who are familiar with that great writer. So we are following, in contemporary UK, we are following a lady called Anaïs, who too is British Peruvian. She is now married and pregnant in London, but she is called back to Peru to sell her ancestral home. And in doing so, by visiting her home again, she unleashes and lets free all of the spirits that have been closed up in the walls of her very palatial house back in Peru. And it is the opportunity to free up this wonderful, surreal walk through the colonial history, the indigenous history of Peru, the cultural context, as well as the profound ups and downs and secrets and conspiracies of her long family history. The challenge is, for me, it starts to get swept away with itself, with its own mythology, with its own world creation, which is profoundly separate from the world that we live in, and it gets so lost in this magical realism, in the surreal world of ghosts and spirits, that we kind of lose the thread of Anaïs and we lose her a bit as a central character. And we find, for me, I found myself meandering the corridors of a long history without much of a guide. However, that's not to say that there isn't anything to celebrate about this book. So we are going back to I've got a picture of it on the design. So Anaïs's house is this very palatial, notable yellow house at the end. However, at the end of a long road in I think it's in Lima. Yeah, I think it's in Lima. It's in Lima, the capital city of Peru. However, when she passes through the entrance, her very sanitized, real, clear thinking plans for the house start to fall apart as the walls start to metaphorically and literally talk to her, as the sounds and the voices of the ancestors she never met, of the history that is embedded deep within her walls of this house comes alive, and of course starts to derail her plans to sell the house and move on. What I found great about this book is that there are passages when we start to get that merge between the magical realism and the real world where it really works. There's a wonderful section that I know has been commented a few times on Goodreads, which I actually think is one of the best parts of this book, is as Anaïs starts to wander through the corridors of history, there is a memory of institutional memory from the house of a girl, a former maid, I think, falling from a window. And she takes 5 or 6 pages to fall from the window, because as she's falling, it's not so much that her memories, when they say in your last moments, your life flashes through your eye, flashes through your brain. Actually, what it was the memories of the house that flashes through this young girl's memory and her brain as she falls to her death. a supposed death. And it's just this wonderful tilt on Western culture that supposes, well, it's all of your life, but actually it was all of her ancestors coming to her, and the house coming to her, and the memory of that window, and all the memories of the ancestors and the house have that fell through her mind as she literally fell through the air. It takes 5 or 6 pages for her to fall from balcony to ground, windowsill to ground. I absolutely love those 6 pages. They're so good. However, it then starts to, like I say, from about halfway through this book, I found it quite hard to keep going. We are very much lost in the world of magical realism with monsters roaming countrysides, and I start to lose the thread on also characters. I want to share this as an example, and also just as general feedback for those who are writers who want to do things around ancestors or indeed communities. I always recommend, if you're writing about community, please read Olive Kitteridge by Elizabeth Strout. This is the family tree that Karina Lickorish Quinn tries to navigate through this book. You don't need to read the characters. I'm just trying to draw attention to the number of ancestors, relationships, etc. that is trying to push into these pages. I can't follow this number of characters. I can't do it. And I'm not overly keen in having to constantly, though I appreciate this, to constantly refer to a family tree to work out who's speaking. Because obviously then the generations start talking over each other, because obviously it's non-sequential. And I found that quite hard. If you are a writer who is going to work on a community with lots of voices or with lots of generations, be wary on the amount that a reader can absorb within, I think it's about 400 and something pages. It's very hard, much as we want to go with you, it's very hard to go with you when we lose track of who's talking and what is the nature of the voice we're hearing. So for example, we might remember it's a woman, but we can't remember if it's a maid, a sister, a rich aunt, or someone that's travelled from overseas back to Peru. And because you lose the thread, you find yourself glazing over some of the pages, which is a shame because obviously Karina has some really inventive writing. So look, I wanted to share The Dust Never Settles. For those who like Isabel Allende, for those who are really interested in Peruvian, South American magical realism, heavy ancestral layers and cultural references, there's a lot to love in The Dust Never Settles. The dust never settles on your ancestors, it never settles on your past. You are always alive. Because even when your lineage runs out, the walls still talk, people. So there's a lot here to love. It just was too much. And I really felt this book could have done with sharper editorial support. So I really hope Karina gets that, because I'm really excited to hear a new voice that brings in this kind of dual world approach and multicultural approach to writing and world creation. It has so much to offer. So Karina, please keep going, and I look forward to reading your next book.